Hello, and on today's episode, I'm here with Jojo Hubbard, co-founder and COO of Electron. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thanks very much for having me on.
Oh, yes, of course. So could you tell me a little bit about the problems that Electron is trying to solve here?
Yeah, we are looking at how you integrate all of these new solar plants, batteries, electric vehicles into today's energy system in a way that enables cheaper, cleaner power for everyone.
Oh, fantastic. So really addressing a major problem in the world today.
Yeah, it's a big problem. It's actually a problem that I've been looking at from different angles kind of my whole career. I started out in renewable asset financing, and we were just kind of energy transition 1.0, just get as many physical assets in the ground and physically connected to the grid as possible. And then we were going, oh my God, like what have we done to the grid costs? And is it impossible to balance the grid, or the grid fees are going up? So I then moved into the kind of financing VC side, and I looked at a lot of battery projects and smart grids. We were going kind of, this should solve the problem, but the market doesn't really exist. Then I actually went to McKinsey, and I was kind of consulting on digital strategy and transformation. We were thinking like, well, how do you make these markets exist? And I came across blockchain, and it was on the back of that we founded Electron. My co-founder Paul Ellis and myself, to really finally look at the problem, because we felt that we had the final piece in place with this new kind of coordinating cooperation layer.
So how is Electron helping to solve these problems?
So it's essentially providing our platform. We talk about it as in terms of digital infrastructure. So I think everyone understands what physical infrastructure is in the energy space. It's the kind of pipes and wires and transformers that get electricity to, that all have to be shared and kind of used by everyone for an efficient system. Because it would be ridiculous if every different service provider had their own wires. So digital infrastructure is kind of the other half of that. It's a shared view of what and where all the assets are in the system, and what all their capabilities are. So, essentially we're sort of trying to operate these markets blind today. And the key, kind of reason that we haven't been able to solve this problem before, essentially, the first reason is that we've got massive fragmentation. On the one hand of the data behind those assets themselves and what and where they are, and on the other hand of the markets that would actually engage them or tell a battery when they want to import power or when they wanted to export power. So we've got kind of huge fragmentation of both data and markets. And then we're like missing this incentive infrastructure for anyone to kind of bring that together and coordinate it. Because everyone today, kind of pre-blockchain, is incentivized and gets maximum value from kind of owning their own market and controlling their own market. And we just never had the tools to build these kind of shared data shared data infrastructures before blockchain, that allowed all the different participants in the network to retain control of their own data, control of their own products, but keep interacting in this kind of coordinating kind of communications framework in a way.
Yes, I don't think people quite realize how fragmented the energy system is becoming. It's gone out of the days of the single coal power plant. Now it's all over the place and all kinds of very different things.
Such a good point. I was reading this article the other day on complex systems. It's the kind of theory of randomly colliding particles that's being applied to all sorts of things in the kind of physical or biological world. And they were talking about, like for example, how do diseases spread? Because this person meets this person and has a propensity to do that. And I was thinking of the complex system being basically a system in which you've got kind of multiple agents interacting according to a kind of basic series of rules. And thinking like that's exactly what has to happen in energy, but there isn't this shared kind of rules infrastructure. And so all of these like smaller batteries and kind of electric vehicles and stuff coming online just aren't even allowed to interact on that basis. And how stupid when actually we can quite easily set up those rules. And just in terms of putting some numbers on it, because I don't think people ever kind of talk about this, but there was a study done by the World Economic Forum and Accenture a year or so ago now, looking at what value just a coordinated set of price import or export signals would create in energy. And it's something like $814 billion of value over the next 8 years. Most of which goes towards, lowering consumer energy bills. It's about about 540 billion, I think. But you know, that there's also like, you know, 1.03 billion tons of carbon to be saved from just like making more efficient use of clean energy and storage or kind of flexible devices. And there's another, you know, almost 200 billion to be saved by the utilities themselves from making more efficient use of their distribution infrastructure, so their wires or their transformers, and kind of prolonging their life. So it's not like anyone's actually winning from this inefficiency. It's essentially that this inefficiency has persisted because it's been seen as a kind of competitive advantage not to coordinate historically.
And are your systems operational right now, or are they still in development?
Yeah, so I guess we completed our pilot trial a couple of months ago in the UK with 12 big utility partners, people like EDF, National Grid, Shell. We announced the first trades through the platform 2 weeks ago. It was a capacity market trade, basically an option to turn someone on or off to the system operator, and an obligation on behalf of the asset. And we're working on a couple of other really cool trades now by the end of the year in the UK, and we've just won contracts or funding to go into 2 new markets, one in Europe and one in Asia. So it's kind of an exciting kind of proof point now, scale up and commercialize kind of point for us.
And for the average consumer, will they have any contact with your system?
Well, so because this coordination infrastructure exists, it will give the average consumers more options. For example, if you own a battery, your battery can help the independent system operator, let's say, balance supply and demand in the total system. Your battery can help a local utility relieve some local congestion. It's like an energy traffic jam, electricity traffic jam. And it can also help some trader or some service provider or kind of sell the active power itself to some kind of local community. Right now, you can just do one of those if you're big enough, and probably none of those if you're small. So the average consumer will experience kind of many more revenue or kind of qualitative benefits from the system existing. But our platform's kind of business-to-business infrastructure, so those will be possible because our platform exists, but they don't have to directly interface with the blockchain itself. I know there are lots of peer-to-peer projects that use blockchain, but there are also a lot more peer-to-peer projects that don't use blockchain. And our kind of fundamental belief is it's not really relevant to the end consumer, what the underlying technology that's enabling that is. It's just relevant kind of what their options are and what their kind of value capture and opportunities are in the market.
So what made you choose the blockchain for the system?
So I think it was really that there was never a way to enforce that everyone was in exactly the same, kind of saying exactly the same version of truth and in coordination with one another without creating some kind of privileged intermediary before. And it was key that everyone was able to be in coordination and interact with energy, just because there are so many different kind of orthogonal demands on the system at once. You know, you've got the system operator trying to balance the market, the local network operator or utility kind of managing their pipes and wires, and then various service providers or you know, who are kind of giving you power. So those are all kind of potentially competitive, potentially non-competitive demands on the system. But as soon as we had this kind of multiplicity of millions and millions of different electric vehicles, kind of batteries, kind of solar projects coming into the system, suddenly there's a need for everyone to be trading on one platform. So before blockchain, the only way to create that kind of one platform that coordinates and finds efficiencies was to centralize. And, you know, energy markets across the world have spent the last 40 years trying to essentially create competition and split up all those different roles and create consumer choice. So it was only when I heard about blockchain, I think it was in about 2015, I came across a kind of single slide while I was at McKinsey on the Ethereum white paper about settlement of distributed contractual relationships. That I had this kind of aha moment of like, this is how you let that battery have all these different contractual obligations and relationships with all these different parties in the system, and also let the owner of the battery trust that their battery was only being used according to the set of rules they stipulated, and seeing this kind of perfect record of trading history. And for me, it was really like the missing piece in the kind of coordination of this new decentralizing energy industry. it was a aha kind of, actually I was like Cassandra, I was kind of picked up the sheet and was like running around the kind of energy floor being like, do you realize what this means? And everyone's like, what, blockchain? I was like, yeah. And they're like, oh, I think you want the financial floor. I think probably every space has one, you know, that kind of person. He's like, this solves everything. And I was like, really? We don't get it.
Certainly seems like a perfect fit for this technology.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and it's actually, I mean, it sounds very complex. The energy problem itself is kind of very complex because you really have to understand what information you're recording about the assets, how you're defining these kind of products they're trading. But the actual blockchain piece is fairly simple. Not a lot of that stuff has to be on blockchain in order to provide those kind of level playing field guarantees. You know, at a kind of minimum, there's like a single identifier for a single asset. There's the ability to grant and rescind data permissions to kind of go into off-chain data sets associated with that asset. So, you know, either technical information about the asset or kind of operational information about the asset. And then on the trading side, you know, you want to have the definition of the rules for the trade. You want to let people commit to doing the trade on the blockchain, and essentially you want to confirm they've been matched on the blockchain. But you don't actually even need to have the matching algorithm sitting on chain. So we've done a lot of work on how to actually simplify the kind of back end side of the tech. It always sounds very exotic when we say it uses blockchain, but it just uses blockchain for the kind of minimal amount to enable coordination. Because the point isn't like, let's remove all central authority figures in energy. It's, you know, let's respect the fact that we've got all these different central authority figures in energy, but they need to be coordinated.
So what have been some of the biggest challenges of developing this system?
Yeah, so I mean, anything you do on today's energy infrastructure, you need to work with utility partners because they currently own all the data. You know, in kind of 10 years' time, when you know this platform exists and everyone's trading on it, then everyone who owns their own assets can own their own data and you know and kind of make that available or not according to their own conditions. But while we're kind of in that transition phase, you have to partner with not only the kind of big kind of grid monopolies, but also the parties who are essentially trading these products. So I think it's that kind of human collaboration piece that's been tricky. You know, we used to joke that kind of 3 years ago, like no one knew what blockchain was and like didn't want to talk about it. And then like suddenly like, and that was our key problem. And then suddenly like, you know, 18 months ago, everyone knew what blockchain was and just wanted to do everything on it. And that was almost like an even worse problem because we spent the whole time just telling enthusiastic people that didn't work or it didn't need to be on blockchain. And I think we're getting to a happy medium now where there's a bunch of utilities who've done a couple of trials, who've kind of thought about it, you know, kind of known us or other parties for a while, and kind of just beginning to touch it and feel it and kind of do real world trials. Because you can say to someone, oh, you know, this data structure means that you can be in coordination with everyone else's data, but no one else sees your own data and you continue to own all your own data. And I'm not even sure they believe you until you build it for them or kind of let them kind of touch it and feel it and see how that works. And
so do you have any plans for the future going forward?
A lot of plans. So as I mentioned, we are scaling up the UK suite of traded products. We just won a contract to go into another European country and a grant funding to start up in a third country in Asia. There's a couple of other interesting markets and projects in development or kind of earlier stage talks. Where we really see this going in the kind of 10-year horizon is this is a kind of base layer what we're building, you know, the kind of asset identity and ability to associate that with trades is something that doesn't exist in any of today's kind of exchange traded electricity markets yet. But it's also like the first data layer for this whole other breed of services that lots and lots of different competitive parties can offer. So let's take a battery, for example. When the battery sells a service to a system operator, there's a whole bunch of service providers who can go and check the battery's operational data and check their contract and check they actually delivered it and be paid by the system operator to do that. So number one, that's really exciting because it brings a whole bunch of much smaller assets into the market and the associated competition and efficiency gains. But that battery can also then, for example, go and get an insurance contract on the basis that it is selling projects into these markets and it can prove that, and on the basis that its operational history, it's never been deteriorated below, let's say, 10% charge or something, and it can actually prove that on the system. So there's like a whole kind of new wave of kind of identity or diligence product for that battery. And then you get some kind of smart guys in their garage who are creating this kind of trading algorithms for how to optimize flows within households of this size with this breed of battery, for example. And, that battery owner can sort of buy one of those algorithms or be traded by one of those kind of new organizations. So you completely change the utility model, like the kind of data structure that exists in energy today. And you have this world in which anyone can kind of build these efficiency services. And that's something that, we've seen with kind of, many other industries, like, for example, the media and telecoms industry, as they kind of move from broadcast TV to interactive media. But it's never really something energy has experienced yet. And as you said at the beginning, people, there's such a big market and people have no idea how inefficiently it's being operated today. And as soon as you can make that transparent and you can interact with it, it just gets me really excited about what the energy market's going to look like in 10 years' time.
Well, it's a really interesting project. Is there anything that I should have asked you that maybe I missed?
I think you did an amazing job. I think we probably covered some of the most interesting pieces.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me. And if you want to find out more about what we're up to, our Twitter hashtag is @ElectronDLT. It stands for Distributed Ledger Technology. And our website is www.electron.org.uk.
All right, I'll make sure I have all those links in the show notes too.
Thank you so much.
You are a podcast listener and you're interested in crypto. Otherwise, why would you be listening to this show, right? Have you tried looking for new crypto and blockchain podcasts to listen to? If you've used Google, then you've probably found a whole bunch of clickbait articles. Top 10 lists that just list the same podcasts over and over again. And most of those podcasts aren't even active anymore. If you use iTunes, then you probably got a whole bunch of irrelevant results. The iTunes search function is absolutely awful. It's kind of like using Alta Vista in the 1990s. Keyword stuffing has made it almost unusable. So I've made a site to fix this problem. Just go to crypto.podcastlist.net. On the site, you'll find a comprehensive list of all the active podcasts covering the blockchain, cryptocurrency, and other decentralization technologies. This is not a curated list of my favorite shows. This list is intended to be complete. I want to list every single show that is focused on this industry. I've got about 75 active shows on the list already. Please let me know if I've missed any shows. This list is also covered by a Creative Commons license, so feel free to reuse it and share it. Check out crypto.podcastlist.net if you are looking for new crypto and blockchain podcasts. And if you have your own show, please check and make sure you are listed. Once again, the site is crypto.podcastlist.net. Please check it out and tell me what you think.